Hi, everybody. Ella Gurfinkel here. And my guest today on Real Estate and Beyond is Lauren Lucas, one of the top real estate agents nationwide with Keller Williams Classic Properties, Classic Properties in Columbus, Ohio. And not only is Lauren in top 1% in her market, but she's also top five in the country. So that's actually a hell of an honor if you ask me, especially knowing how hard the agents work and how few agents actually get to be in that top category. And what I would love to discuss today is the importance of having a buyer's agent represent you. There's so much misinformation and disinformation and myth out there on the interwebs and in just the human conversations, human interactions that we all hear about and have with our clients on the lending side. Why do I need a buyer's agent? And whereas I try to do my best to explain it, I figured I'll bring an expert to actually speak from the heart and not necessarily talk about a day in a life, but still tell you all the things that the buyer's agent, and it doesn't matter where in the country the buyer's agent may be, the functions are still the same. Let's talk about the need for the buyer's agent and why you and I both, Lauren, agree and believe that the need for the buyer's agent is not going to go away, right?
I very strongly believe that, and not to, jump right in too much, but the whole reason I'm in real estate is because when I first tried to buy a house in 2012, I didn't know that I could have my own representation. So I went with the listing agent and they already have a fiduciary agreement with the seller. So the listing agent has no obligation, to me, and it didn't go well. I didn't end up getting the house, but that was the time of short sales and things like that. But that's exactly why I got into real estate, is because I did not understand what had gone wrong. I started to educate myself, and realized very quickly that, a lot of consumers don't understand what the buyer's agent role is and how they protect you, protect your biggest investment of your life, and how they can make the transaction just so much more seamless.
So let me circle back to the very first phrase you said, fiduciary responsibility. I think that's like thing one that majority of consumers, especially those buying a home for the first time, like when we tell them about the fiduciary responsibility, the eyes glaze over, it's deer in the headlights moment. Please tell everybody what in the world that means.
Yeah, so I mean, in very basic layman's terms, it means I have to protect and do whatever is in my client's best interest. I can't, whatever they tell me is confidential. Everything that I can't show their cards. I mean, I represent them in every way, shape, and form, whether it is in, writing the offers or, negotiations, closings, possession, anything that I have to do to protect them. It is my ethical obligation.
Now, flipping the table, when somebody, a buyer, tries to go straight to the listing agent, that responsibility by extension is already between the listing agent and the seller. So, what happens when the buyer approaches the listing agent and what happens to that fiduciary responsibility? Because that, I think, is really the crux of all of the issues that most buyers are having or are not aware of.
Absolutely. So when, at least in Ohio, when that happens, so say, back in 2012, when I was buying my first house and I did not have my own representation, we do have an agency disclosure that says, who's representing the seller and if there's representation for the buyer. So as a listing agent, they have two opportunities. They can either get permission from their seller to represent both the buyer and the seller. And in that case, they would have fiduciary duty. However, having fiduciary duty to two sides when you're in negotiations is very difficult, right? So what I have seen in my experience is a lot of agents will basically, in that agency disclosure, they will have the buyer sign that the buyer understands that they do not have representation. So the one agent technically is working the entire deal, but just as you said, their fiduciary duty is already to the seller who has signed the listing documents to even get the house on the market.
I often actually, in my practice, when again somebody asks me about saving the money by going straight to the listing agent, I try to usually explain to them this way. You're suing somebody, they're trying to defend themselves, or vice versa, and you're both are using the same attorney. How does that work out?
Exactly. Exactly. And I think too, like I said, it's the biggest financial investment that most people are going to make in their life, and having someone who A, knows the process, knows the contracts, knows the disclosures, knows what to look for, and B, has a fiduciary duty to protect you throughout the entire process is very important.
Absolutely. I mean, there's, no qualms about it. It's, like I said, it's equal to using the same attorney for both sides, or in the case of buying a house, it's the biggest financial investment of everybody's life, regardless of they're buying the first home or the 21st home. It's still the biggest financial investment of their life. So anything and everything can go wrong. And this is a perfect segue into talking about like what can go wrong when you're not being represented. I mean, I know this could be like a whole day of,
Do you want
but
it alphabetically, chronologically? How do you want it?
probably the most glaring issues because, again, in people's minds, I think where that question comes from is that in many consumers' minds, the agent gets paid for just opening the door for me and then just writing a contract. So the thousands the agents make is for basically doing no work. And I, okay, full disclosure, yes, I want to claw people's eyes out who say that because I know way too many hardworking agents in the industry across the country. And it just makes my hair stand because that could be nothing further from the truth.
Right.
So it's
Well,
not
and
just
I
opening
think
doors and writing contracts.
no, it's not. And I think that, in a sense, I'm guilty of this, making it seem so easy because that's my job. My job is to make it as stress-free and as seamless for my client, whether I'm a buyer's agent or a listing agent, as I possibly can. So do they always know all of the fires I put out? Absolutely not. Do they always know? I have buyers who, sure, maybe they've seen two houses and they wrote on one and they got it right away. I also have buyers who have been trying to buy something for 2 years and they're writing $40,000-$50,000 over asking, and I'm showing them 10, 20 houses every week. So I get it that, the consumer could see that it's just opening up a door, but it's not. And here's the thing too, is a lot of people don't understand, like, just like an attorney or a dentist or any profession, right? You're not just paying for what you're getting, into the house, a contract written, things like that. You're paying for my experience. You're paying for my knowledge. You're paying for my creativity in this market. You're paying for all of the, years of wins and losses that I've seen happen, whether with my client or in the industry as a whole. You're paying for so much more than just access to the MLS or access to a house. You're paying for, the evolving progress or progression of what it is to finally sit down and have a buyer's consultation all the way through, not just closing, but if it's your first house, I'm making sure that you know that you need to change your air filters. I'm making sure you know to change your voting. I'm making sure you know how to winterize, what to do in the spring, what to look out for. As your house appreciates over the time, Columbus has appreciated, 10 to 12% per year is nothing for us. And I'm still talking to clients I sold 7 years ago and saying, hey, here is an update of what your house is worth. Not because I think you should sell it, but I want to make sure you have enough homeowners insurance if anything should happen. Right? So it's things like that you don't know what you don't know. So hiring an expert in that space, I mean, it's a no-brainer in my opinion, especially going through it.
Absolutely. I mean, again, what can ever go wrong, right? So let's bring a couple of examples just for kicks and giggles and have fun with it.
Yeah, so you want some experience, huh? Okay, so my favorite not to is first and foremost, when you go into contract on a house, financially stop spending anything that is not a bill, your rent, your car payment. That's it. We're not going couch shopping. We're not going to go finance a new car to celebrate. We're not going to go book a vacation on a credit card. Stop. Stop spending your money, because that is the biggest thing that I see people mess it up for themselves, is they don't understand that any little tiny change in debt to income in general, if they switch their jobs, things like that, it can implode.
If we were in the same room right now, I would like literally just hug and kiss you because that's the same conversation we have with buyers on the lending side. And I think they really have to hear it more than once, I guess, or from more than one party, whether it actually will sink in.
Yeah.
So, you know, pretty much everything we say is not just theoretical. It usually comes from experience. When somebody goes out and buys that furniture for the house they haven't closed yet, and now everything has been derailed and we have to pick up the pieces.
Absolutely. And I've seen people, as little as opening up a Kohl's card, it dropped their credit score, or, buying a couch or financing a couch, whether you opened up a new line of credit or you put it on a credit card and it tipped your debt to income off. I've seen a lot of things. I've seen people go out and buy a new car. I've seen people get married. Don't do that. At least in Ohio. Ohio's a dour state. It's only 30 to maybe 45 days. Just stop doing anything that could ruin your chances of not only getting into a home, but this is where you're going to start making memories, right? When you look back in 10, 15 years, your home is your safe place, right? And to mess that up over a couch or a Kohl's card or a new car, it's so disheartening to see it, but it happens. And it happens more than a lot of people think.
It unfortunately does, and unfortunately, it will hold the process. So, in terms of not necessarily the not tos from the lending perspective or the buying perspective, but more in terms of not tos when buying a home and working with a professional agent.
Don't utilize someone just because you know them, would be my first point of because I see all the time, 2020 to 2022, you saw all these people that were getting furloughed and would just go get their real estate license because it's easy. Don't get someone who doesn't know what they're doing, or is just doing it as a hobby, or is not up to date on your market, doesn't know how to pull comps. I mean, there's so many different things that really matter. For example, I've seen deals completely blow up because, the agent's maybe not experienced and is writing I won't call it negligent, but definitely reckless offer. And the buyer doesn't understand what the terms are that they're agreeing to, whether it's a full appraisal gap or, no inspection or things like that. They're doing things to win without understanding what the recourse of that could be.
Let's talk a little more about that. Using somebody to represent them as an agent just because there may be family, there may be an acquaintance or an old friend or a coworker who is doing real estate as a side gig or part-time. Doing, multiple things and working multiple gigs is totally fine in my view. But I think the bigger piece is, do they have the experience to actually represent you or represent your best interest and actually fulfill that fiduciary responsibility? So things, I guess, what are the warning signs maybe to watch out for? Because some people, like I said, are compelled to use their family member, coworker, or friend. So what are the warning signs to watch out for? Because in my book, if I see the warning signs, I've learned to step back and reevaluate the situation. And that's information I want to get across to my clients, your clients, basically anybody and everybody who's buying real estate, is that there are certain red flags that once you see them, you need to figure out how to get out of the red flags and have the professional representation.
I think first and foremost is make sure that you're heard. As the consumer, make sure that whatever agent you choose is hearing what your wants and needs are, not just trying to, get a quick paycheck. I hate to say that, but making sure that they're actually hearing, why you need a first floor primary suite or why you need a finished basement, understanding exactly why your dreams are your dreams. Again, working for you and not just working for a commission, right? And again, I'm not saying that, I was a new agent once. I'm not saying that new agents are uneducated. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is make sure that whomever you choose is protecting you at every step of every way, from the time you sit down for that buyer consultation to the time they discuss how the process works, making sure you understand what is earnest money, what is escrow, what is appraisal gap coverage, why do I want an inspection, why are you telling me that I might have to waive the remedy period? Understand and educating you on not only what it takes to win, but why it takes these different things and getting a little bit creative in this market to get your win. Because again, even if it's a agent who's been doing this for 40 years, but maybe they haven't educated themselves on this market that we're in right now. You're going to go see all these houses and spend all your weekends and write all these offers. But if you're not writing offers that are going to be even in the running, it's just a waste of time and you're getting your hopes up for nothing, So understanding what creative backgrounds, what education, are they networking? Are they talking to other agents? Do they have a good reputation with other agents? Can they get you to the finish line? And I think that, those types of things in today's market where we're seeing multiple offers more often than not are almost just as important as making sure that this person is protecting your best interests.
Actually, you mentioned something that just struck a chord because so many transactions fall in place and probably three times as many don't. In my personal experience, is when the agent in the transaction has a stellar reputation, the buyer's agent has a stellar reputation in their local marketplace, and the listing agent knows of that stellar reputation. That's always not just a notch in the belt that typically elevates that offer in the listing agent's eyes. At least, again, that's been my experience. When the listing agent and the buyer's agent have transacted together in the past and they already have a positive experience of working together, again, versus somebody they've had a negative experience with, and when let's say the two offers are the same and they're weighing the same two offers, agent A they did a transaction with at some point or multiple transactions, and they know how they go and they love them, or at least like them, and then agent B is somebody that presented negatively in the past, it's going to be agent A's buyer's offer that's going to be selected.
And as a listing agent, obviously we're not the ones selecting the offer, it's the seller. But many times, just like you said, if two offers are neck and neck, they ask us, hey, which one do you think is the more solid offer? And if I know the agent and I know we've gotten to the closing table before, or I know the lender and I know we're going to get to the closing table with the lender too, those things matter. And it's not, the end all be all by any means, but it definitely helps in those types of situations.
Let me ask you one last question. The importance, and that's the other piece that I always love agents' opinion on it, because I've pretty much heard and seen the whole gamut to where, I'll take a person out to see a home or two or three before they actually talk to a lender, or I will not take anybody out until they're pre-approved. So the importance of actually being pre-approved for clients, because that's the biggest pushback as a lender I get from the newly referred clients or from somebody coming to me cold. So, I want to see homes before I will fill out an application and do a pre-approval. And then, like I said, from the agent standpoint, somehow they listen to you more so than they listen to us. So where do you stand on that?
So I will say I agree with you that they tend to have more rapport with us, but that's because we're with them. We're in the house, we're meeting them for coffee. We're not just on the phone or FaceTime, right? So we have more of we have more of an opportunity to build that rapport and trust, right? I see both sides of it, as I want to go see houses before I get pre-approved to kind of see if this is even a process that I want to go through. I don't know this lender. Why am I having to give my social security number over the phone? Things like that. I get it. But also I've seen people who go out and look at houses and they fall in love. And then when they talk to the lender, they're heartbroken because they can't afford it. So I always sit down for a consultation or a Zoom call or have the conversation of understanding what this market is like, understanding why it's important to work with a local lender or a lender who is with a mortgage company, not some online, you can print it off real quick type thing. There has to be a relationship and another person on the side of the phone, especially in this market, right? But I also go through kind of understanding, what does your financial situation look like? That's not my lane. That's your lane as the lender, right? I don't want to know more than, do we have proof of funds for an appraisal gap? I don't need to know your credit score. I don't need to know how much money you make. I can't help you unless my teammate, which is the lender, is also in on this conversation from the get-go.
That is awesome. I mean, again, I love that input because we don't want to put people off, obviously, before we even start working with them. But at the same time, it's all about making their experience the best experience possible. And this brings me back to something that you said about mid this interview. We make it look so easy. And we're all guilty of that, agents, lenders, etc. We try and we strive to make it so easy for our clients that they think that, oh, now we can do this too. Or they're getting paid too much for what little they did without realizing how much work actually goes on behind the scenes. And a lot of what we tell our clients, a lot of what we do in our consults really comes from years, if not decades of experience. And it comes from the point of and the origin of, let us wrap our arms around you and protect you with the knowledge that we have so that you don't make the mistakes that you could or would otherwise, so that your process does end up being a pleasant experience, not a nightmare and a half.
Absolutely. And I think too, having a strong agent working for you who understands what the inspection report looks like, right? Gives you a heads up of, hey, you're going to get a very invasive 40 to 80 page document that says every single thing that's wrong with this house. That's normal. Setting that expectation of, instead of they get it in their email inbox and they're like, what is this? I'm not buying this house, right? Setting expectation of these things in the inspection are going to be normal maintenance items. You're going to have to clean out your gutters. You're going to have, you know what I mean? Little things that aren't a big deal. But also they have to understand if there are red flags, if there are foundation issues, water seal broken, things like that, not only understanding what that means, but what could that cost? And you, as an agent, it took me years of following around inspectors, looking at scopes of work, looking at invoices and estimates and work orders and understanding, why this drain is better than that drain, or, this roof is better than that roof. I mean, that's years of experience that, is invaluable, but to be able to stand in that house and say, hey, I can see XYZ, whatever it is, and in my experience, this is what it could cost. Okay, now as a buyer, I have more information of, do I even want to get into contract, get my hopes up, pay potentially $1,000 for an inspection, order an appraiser to get out there, and then in 2 weeks, I knew that was there, so I have no problem with it. Whereas if I didn't point that out on the showing, 2 weeks later, it could be a whole thing that blows up the entire deal, and now my buyer is out $1,000, $1,500 for no reason, right? So inspections, understanding appraisals is huge. Not that we are appraisers by any means, but understanding, okay, in this neighborhood, the average for the last 3 to 6 months, things are going, X amount percent over ask, or, everything else here has been completely updated. This house hasn't. And kind of understanding, especially in this market, if you're going to offer $30,000 over to win, you're likely going to have to bring 10 to 20 of that in cash because it's not going to appraise, right? Or, hey, they priced this super low, multiple offers are going to come in, but here's where the data shows you're probably not going to need your appraisal gap until you get to this point, and then you might need it to get to the finish line, right? So understanding those types of things. And like I said, time is valuable too. So making sure that you have an agent who understands and has a reputation that will get you into a house, and they're not just writing list price with inspection, with remedy, no, or, all these things that as a listing agent, I see it. And I'm like, man, I feel bad for that buyer because they're never going to win if this is what all their offers look like. And it's not ugly as a listing agent. I have multiple other offers that are much cleaner, much better for the seller, and much less ask, right? But But that's the thing, is that the consumers don't know what they don't know. So as a buyer, in their eyes, they're like, oh yeah, I got an offer in, this is great. But it wasn't a good offer, or it wasn't a clean offer. And they don't know that unless they have an agent who's fighting for them and understanding what it's taking in different markets. I've also seen, this is a good one. I can't wait to see your facial expression on this. I've also seen agents write offers $20,000 over asking on properties that have been on the market for over a month, because that's all they know. They got licensed when everything was over asking. Every offer they've ever written is over asking. So they think, hey, I got to over. Exactly. I've seen offers get written for $20,000 over asking for a house that has been sitting on the market for a month. Do you think that's protecting your buyer?
Facial expression, I'm at a loss for words actually, at least for, words you can use in polite company.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, that's a complete misrepresentation of the buyer.
Right. But there's agents out there who do it. And I'm not saying they're everywhere, and I'm not saying that they're even doing it maliciously. There are just some agents who didn't join into something where they had a mentor, or, they have maybe a productivity coach or a team lead or something like that. And to get your real estate license, they don't teach you how to open a door or negotiate, it all comes from experience, right? And again, I truly, in my heart of hearts, want to believe that every single realtor or real estate agent out there does have the best intentions. I truly do believe that, want to believe that about everybody, right? But when you see silly things like this happen throughout years of experience, it's kind of like, man, that person deserves better. And you can't say that. I can't go steal. And ethically, there's nothing I can do. I just feel bad. But at the same point, it doesn't have to be that way,
No, you're absolutely correct. And that all goes back to all of the years of experience. And that's why, that's really at the end of the conversation, I guess. This is why I wanted to have this conversation, because our consumers really don't know what they don't know. So getting that information to them early, having the conversation about what they don't know is becoming, I think, increasingly more important, because just like people not understanding the full breadth of the issues that a buyer's agent deals with, same, they don't understand the lending side where, oh yeah, I'll just go get a better rate online. Well, that better rate online may cost them a lot more, if not even the house, if that lender can't perform. But again, that just comes from not understanding or not knowing what they don't know. And that's really is the reason why I'm doing the Real Estate and Beyond interviews and podcasts, because there is so much that the regular, like I said, home buyer, the regular consumer just doesn't know, and it can, what you don't know can hurt you, and usually it does. That, I guess, I'm not making it my mission in life to bring all this forward, but I really love educating the broader public on anything and everything that's real estate related, because again, it's very near and dear to me, and it breaks my heart every time something like what you were just saying happens, when somebody, maybe again not maliciously, gets misrepresented, or somebody not maliciously, doesn't get to go through the full process. It just all comes from, a lot of times, the lack of knowledge, and that lack of knowledge can be actually on both sides. It's not always the professional that's to blame, but that lack of knowledge, I think both parties should be responsible to.
Absolutely. And I think, no one is perfect. I don't know everything, but I do know that I've got about 500 houses that I've sold, 500 different experiences, and things pop up, especially with, we're seeing a lot of possession after closing. So making sure that your seller of the house you're buying, now that you own it, if they're going to stay there, making sure they're keeping insurance, make sure they're keeping utilities in their name, make sure you have some sort of an agreement drawn up that, say the water heater goes out, or there's a water damage, fire damage, who's responsible, right? Making sure that all of
Not
that.
to mention the 60-day occupancy rule for owner occupied loans can go past that.
Yep, absolutely. And there's just, again, over 500 transactions, and there still are things that pop up that I'm like, oh wow, I've never seen that before, because every single situation is different, you know. Understanding what seller credits are, how can you use them, understanding, you know, how can, maybe I don't have, maybe my pre-approval is only to 250, I can only go to 250, and they have multiple offers. What else can I do behind the scenes in the terms and conditions to make my offer stand out? Non-refundable earnest money, paying seller closing costs, paying commissions, you know, things like that. And just getting creative with it. It doesn't always have to be, and it's not always the highest, you know, the person who throws out the highest number is the one who gets it. The terms and the conditions matter, and making sure that you can put your money where your mouth is, or your terms, whatever you want to call it, making sure that you can stand behind the terms that you're agreeing to, which you really can't do unless you fully understand what those terms are.
Oh, and let's not forget playing shrink for our clients throughout the transaction. And now I got your facial expression back.
I just said this the other day. I was like, I wish I had billable hours of, you know, just,
Right?
I mean, because it is. We are with them, and I don't take this lightly at all. We are with them through normally death, divorce, graduations, selling their home that their family grew up in, downsizing, first time buyers who have never spent this amount of money in their life. I mean, we are with them through very intimate, very emotional transitions. And you know, quite honestly, and I get the goosebumps even saying this. I mean, it's an honor and a privilege to be chosen by someone to hire me to get them through this journey, because there is so much that goes into it emotionally that I have to be an ear to listen. I have to be a shoulder for them to lean on, right? I mean, I cry with my clients. I laugh with my clients. I get them through some of the hardest times of their life. And that matters. And I think that that's why myself and my team and my partner, I mean, over 80% of our business is repeat clients, referrals, and things like that. And that's, I would be shocked if that is not at least a portion or a large portion of the reason why, is because we build relationships with them and we get to know them, and we know when their birthdays are and their anniversary. And it's a lifelong relationship that gets them through, okay, now I bought my first house. Okay, now maybe I'm getting married or having a kid, or, you know, and everything changes, right? But it's a never ending, once you're a client, you're a lifetime client, because it never ends. There's always going to be something that I need to help you with that you might not even know. And like I said, I use the homeowner's insurance as the best example, because my clients who bought their house for $130,000 last year or 5 years ago, they need to know that now it's worth $350,000, and their insurance policy probably isn't going to cover if, knock on wood, anything happens, right? They need to know of maybe why their taxes are jumping astronomically, or if their abatement is up. They need to know all these things, because to the everyday person who's working a 9-to-5 job, most of them have a set salary or a set income, right? Well, if their mortgage payment jumps $400 and they don't know why, and it turns out that their house got reappraised, do you fight it? Can I fight it? What's my house actually worth? Or if they get, you know, their basement floods and their homeowner's insurance doesn't cover, you know, making sure that they have everything they need to be a good homeowner, because not everyone can be a good homeowner, and that's okay. But making them understand and educating them to the point of, is this right for you? How can we get you in here? And then what do you do over the course of being that homeowner?
Lauren, thank you so much for your time today. I think the
Absolutely.
information you've been sharing is absolutely invaluable. I mean, seriously, this is absolutely invaluable in terms of what the buyers need to look out for and the type of professional they really need to be working with. Because there is nothing, I was going to say something mean, there is nothing worse than, again, not getting the proper representation. And once again, I'll liken it to the court scenario where good attorney can get somebody off, and not so great attorney can land somebody in jail for a long time. And we don't want that home purchase to become that jail.
Right. And I think, the biggest thing that I can recommend, even if an agent is listening to this, is make sure that your agent is getting educated. Make sure they're in every networking event. They're at every single mastermind. They're at every single, every time an inspector speaks, if I can go, I'm there. Every time a title company speaks, if I can go, I'm there, because I need to know from start to finish everything I can. Even if it's not my lane, I need to know the process, right? So just staying educated and making sure you get representation that is educated.
Absolutely. Lauren, again, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Appreciate your time, and the knowledge you've imparted is incredible, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you.